You wake up to the sound of church bells, not the kind that mark the hour, the kind that marked the dead. Or perhaps 1630, or perhaps 1656. It does not matter which outbreak this is. The bells sound the same every time. Somewhere in the city behind you, a cart is already moving from street to street, and a man is already calling out for the bodies to be brought down to him. You are not that man. You are something stranger. You are a plague doctor. And in a few minutes, you are going to walk directly into the houses everyone else is running from. Let's start with what you're wearing, because it's the first thing anyone notices about you. And it's the reason people remember this job centuries later. You pull on a long waxed leather coat treated with oil or tallow to keep fluids from soaking through. You strap on leather gloves, leather boots, leather everything. Because in a world that does not yet understand germs, leather feels like armor against something invisible. Then you reach for the mask. The mask is the part everyone recognizes. A long curved beak, sometimes 6 inches long, extending out from a pair of round glass eyepieces. It looks less like medical equipment and more like a bird crossed with a nightmare, and that resemblance is not an accident. The design is credited to Charles de Lorme, physician to King Louis XIII of France, who described the costume in his own writings, sometime around the 1620s. The beak is not decorative. It is functional, in the way doctors of this era understood function. You stuff the inside of it with dried herbs, flowers, vinegar-soaked sponges, sometimes camphor or myrrh. The medical theory of the time, called miasma theory, holds that disease travels through bad-smelling air. If you can filter the air through something fragrant before it reaches your lungs, you believe you can filter out the sickness itself. You don't know about bacteria. You don't know that the real culprit moving through this city is a bacterium called Yersinia pestis, carried by fleas, carried by rats, jumping from host to host in a chain you cannot see. You only know that people who go near the sick get sick, and that something in the air near them seems to carry the danger. Your entire protective costume is built on a theory that happens to be wrong about the mechanism, but right enough about the danger that it occasionally helps anyway. The waxed coat keeps fleas from biting through to your skin. The gloves do the same. You have stumbled into accidental protection while chasing the wrong explanation. You carry a wooden cane. Long enough to keep distance between yourself and your patients, you use it to point to lift a sleeve, to check a swelling without touching skin directly. Sometimes you use it to keep crowds back in the street, because by now, in towns hit hard enough by repeated outbreaks, people both want you and fear you in the same breath. Your first house this morning belongs to a merchant family. You knock. No one answers right away, which is normal. Eventually, a wife opens the door, a crack, sees your beaked silhouette, and steps back to let you in without a word. You have learned to read houses the way other people read faces. The smell tells you things before you reach the sick. So does the silence, or the crying, or the particular hush of a household that has already stopped pretending things will be fine. You climb the stairs. In the bedroom, a man in his 30s lies on a straw mattress soaked through with sweat. You don't need to ask many questions. You already know what you're looking for, and within moments you find it. A swelling at the base of his neck, hard and dark, about the size of an egg. This is a bubo, and it is the symptom that gives bubonic plague its name. You may find others under the arms, in the groin, anywhere lymph nodes cluster close to the surface. Historical records, including treatises written by physicians like Guy de Chauliac during the Black Death of the 14th century, describe these swellings in detail, along with the fever, the vomiting, the dark blotches some victims develop under the skin. The reason some chroniclers called this sickness the Black Death in the first place. You have very little you can actually do for this man. You might lance the buboes, draining them, in the belief that releasing the corrupted fluid releases the disease itself. You might bleed him, opening a vein, following centuries of medical tradition that treats nearly everything as an imbalance of the bodies for humors. Blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile that needs correcting. You might apply a poultice of herbs directly to the swelling. None of this will cure him. You know, somewhere underneath your training, that your job today is not really to heal. It's to be present. It's to document. It's to offer whatever comfort, ritual, and procedure can offer when medicine itself has nothing real to give. Some plague doctors were highly trained. Physicians who took these positions out of civic duty, sometimes paid directly by town councils desperate to have someone. Anyone treating the sick when regular doctors had fled. Other plague doctors were far less qualified, sometimes barely trained at all, taking the job because no one else would, because the pay during a crisis could be substantial, because the desperate need for personnel in a city, losing physicians to death and flight by the week, meant standards dropped fast. You might be either kind. The beak doesn't tell anyone which one you are. It only tells them what you do. Your pay, when town councils are organized enough to offer it, can actually be quite good by the standards of ordinary medical work, sometimes contracted at rates significantly higher than a physician would normally earn, precisely because almost no one wants this job, and someone has to take it. Some contracts from cities like Florence and Orvieto, preserved in surviving municipal records, show towns negotiating directly with physicians, offering salary, housing, and sometimes guarantees about supplies, all in exchange for treating plague victims specifically. But money is not the same as safety. Despite the costume, despite the herbs stuffed into your beak, plague doctors die at high rates. You know this. Everyone in this profession knows this. You walk into houses other people have already marked as doomed, and you do it again tomorrow and the day after. For as long as the outbreak lasts, or as long as you last, whichever comes first, by midday, you've visited 4 more households. In one, an entire family is already gone, and your task shifts from treatment to documentation. Recording cause of death for town records that towns across Europe began keeping with increasing seriousness after repeated outbreaks taught officials that tracking the dead mattered, both for understanding the disease's spread and for the grim bureaucratic necessity of managing a city overwhelmed with bodies. In another house, you find a woman who will likely survive, her fever already breaking, her body simply stronger or luckier than her neighbors. You cannot tell the difference between these outcomes in advance. Nobody can. That uncertainty is the hardest part of the job. Harder in some ways than the smell, harder than the risk to your own life. You walk from house to house, unable to promise anyone an outcome, because you genuinely do not know what will happen. And pretending otherwise would be its own kind of cruelty. Your status in town is strange and contradictory. People need you. People also avoid you in the street, the same way they avoid the cart that carries away the dead. Children sometimes follow you at a distance, fascinated by the mask. Adults sometimes cross the road rather than pass too close, worried that whatever clings to your coat after a day's work might cling to them too if they get near enough. You are simultaneously essential and untouchable, a combination that defines this job more than almost any other in this era. In the evening, you return to whatever lodging the town has arranged, which is often separate from the general population, sometimes literally outside the town walls, because officials understand at least the basic principle, if not the mechanism, that distance reduces risk. You remove the coat. You remove the mask. You wash, as best as washing exists in this period, and you wait to see if tomorrow brings fever of your own. This job, in this exact form, with this exact costume, did not last forever. As medical understanding slowly shifted, as the link between rats, fleas, and disease eventually became clear centuries later through the work of scientists studying bacteria, the entire framework that justified the beaked mask collapsed. Miasma theory gave way to germ theory by the late 19th century. The protective gear plague doctors wore had worked in its accidental way by blocking fleas, but the reasoning behind it had been wrong the whole time. And once doctors understood the real mechanism of infection, the specific costume disappeared, along with the theory that birthed it. What stayed behind was the image. The beaked mask outlived its medical purpose by centuries, surviving as a symbol, eventually finding new life in Venetian carnival costumes. In modern Halloween imagery and popular cultures, shorthand for plague and death itself, almost no one wearing that mask today, at a costume party or in a film, knows that it once contained dried roses and vinegar-soaked cloth, worn by a person walking voluntarily into the most dangerous houses in a dying city. There is something worth sitting with here. You did a job built on a wrong theory. Wearing protection that worked for reasons you didn't understand, walking toward danger that better doctors and regular people alike were running from, you did not have the tools to actually save most of the people you visited. You had only the willingness to show up anyway, day after day, in a city that needed someone to stand in the room when everyone else had already left it, that, in the end, might be the truest thing this job ever offered. Not a cure, not even real understanding. Just presence, in the place where presence mattered most, when almost no one else would give it.